Was this some sort of nuclear explosion, or did I die? Did I potentially die for a short amount of time, or experience a near-death experience? You'd be simply amazed at the terrifying and horrifying calls that many police officers receive that you'll never know as a civilian. Tonight, I'm going to take you through several of these encounter stories by several officers that will scare you. Story 1. My name is PR, and I live in the San Francisco Bay Area here in California. I wanted to send you this encounter that I had with a large predator that I believe was either a Wendigo or a Skinwalker. Now, I've been a large fan of yours for quite a while, and I found your paranormal and mysterious episodes very intriguing. Stunning pieces of work, actually. So, I had felt compelled to share my experiences with you because I feel that my encounter has ties to other experiences that you have also included in your episodes. This experience took place in mid-September of 2018. I'd gone to a local park called Henry Coast State Park. I had gone there before, and the park is supposedly very well known for Bigfoot sightings, and also Dogman sightings. I was alone on this particular day and off shift. I arrived at the destination around 7:30 p.m. I parked my vehicle and began to walk up a dirt trail which led me to a small meadow. The meadow was only about 200 yards away from my car. The meadow had a large field of wild sunflowers within the meadow itself, and as I was walking, I kept looking around the meadow, trying not to miss any detail that might deem interesting. I had the feeling, though, that I was being watched the entire time. I continued walking and debated with myself the entire time whether I should turn around or not. The only reason I kept going was because I was determined to see something or find something, and little did I know, I would definitely do that. I'd even brought my video camera with me in the event that I would see a Bigfoot or something of the like, and also an audio recorder to capture sound. I kept thinking that I should have brought a gun with me just in case I needed it. I had to stop several times because I kept thinking that I saw movement, and I kept thinking that there were creatures on either side of me trying to get my attention. I suppose in some ways, I was not so excited to see whatever it was that I would see. I mean, after all, we're talking about Bigfoot here. I just wanted to see one so I could say I had seen one and move on with my life. I had never really believed in any of these creatures, but in the back of my mind, I always had wanted to see at least one in person. The sun was now beginning to go down, and dusk was setting in even more. And all the while I had felt watched, everything around me just felt very still. I knew there was something around, but I could not see anything. So I kept walking, trying to see if there was anything. And I walked into a large field of sunflowers and kept looking around. I was about 300 or so yards away from the tree line in the meadow when I heard a scream. It was a very loud scream. It sounded similar to a woman in pain, but screaming for help. It was blood-curdling, actually, and I had never heard a scream so startling in my life. I stopped, looking around, and realized that I was the only person around. Generally, right from the view of the field is a large, popular trail, but there was nobody on it. I was then convinced that whatever was out there was the source of the scream, and it was not a person in need of help. I stopped, listening more intently, to see if I could see anything. And this is when I saw what I did. My eyes laid upon 7 creatures that I saw about 50 yards away from me. They stood barely 5 feet tall from what I could guess, and they were very humanoid. But their appearance was extremely disturbing. They looked, to me, like skinned men and women. All red and muscly, disgusting looking. I did not see any hair, fur, or skin for that matter, just this humanoid-looking beings. I was scared, but I tried to pull out my camera. But all of my electronics had died, including my audio recorder. Also including my GoPro and my cell phone. Everything. As far as I'm concerned, these creatures had not yet noticed me, luckily, but when I realized that my electronics were dead, I immediately got the feeling that I was in severe danger, and that these creatures were protecting something. I was almost in total darkness by that time. I then turned to run back down the trail until I hit the main trail that would take me back to my vehicle. And just as I got to the main portion of the trail, I knew these things knew I was there, and they were now following me. I don't know how many, but I knew at least one of them would. And I could hear them gaining on me, just off in the woodline. I could hear this deep, raspy breath. It was nasty, like somebody who had smoked all their life. I tried to double time it and sprint even faster, running to my car. I moved quicker and quicker, and eventually making it back. After getting back into my car, I saw the creature much closer now. It was moving quickly back towards the direction of the meadow, and my assumption that it was following me was true. But it was running on all fours, and it looked much like you would expect, like a person would on all fours and how awkward they would look, but it moved very smoothly. I locked all my doors, speeding away faster than I possibly could, all the way back to my house. I arrived back home so shaken up that I could not believe it. I could not believe that my camera and all my electronics had died. It just didn't make any sense. It was amazing. I could not believe what had happened, and I still had not had the chance to document what I had experienced. And funny enough, as soon as I got out of that area, all my electronics were able to turn on yet again. That includes my GoPro, my cell phone, my audio recorder, as if nothing had happened. And they were all at full battery too. Which tells me that these creatures, whatever they were, had emitted some sort of electronical interference, like an EMT or something. I'm also a police officer with multiple years on the job and have faced life or death situations. I've never been that scared before in my life, and I do not plan on going back there looking for these things anytime soon whatsoever. Story 2. This occurred on September 23rd, 2014. I was off duty at the time and was camping out with a friend of mine on the Cherokee Indian Reservation. We were off a remote dirt road surrounded by mountains and thick brush. The campground we were at was very secluded due to the weather conditions at the time. That night, it had rained and the roads were extremely muddy. There were also landslides, making traveling all around very unsafe. It had rained all the way into the next morning. Now, at approximately 6 a.m., my friend comes into my tent to wake me up, and he is very, very visibly shaken, very pale, almost sickly looking. When he wakes me up, he tells me something I could hardly believe. He saw 3 Bigfoot creatures walking across the road in front of his vehicle. He said their bodies were large and went on to describe them even more, and said they were indeed Bigfoot. They were very dark, very hairy, having enormous strides, and they walked from west to east, from the mountains to the brush. All 3 of them were on the same side, moving in the same direction. And he also stated he saw another big one on the other side of the road, as if calling those 3 over. And he believes that one was the big alpha male. Again, he was so pale and shaking. And now this is a friend who wouldn't even give ghost stories a time of day. So for him to be telling me that he saw several Bigfoot creatures is pretty astounding. We ended up leaving the area pretty quickly. We have no idea what these creatures are capable of at all. And later on, I began researching this area more, and found out that there's actually a reservation not too far from our camp. I got a chance to talk to several of the natives in the adjacent area, and each of them have their own stories. Apparently, there is a very violent tribe of these creatures near the base of the mountains. I don't believe that this was a tribe that the natives described. I also don't believe that these creatures are violent and very aggressive towards both people and animals. Personally, I don't believe that this was a tribe at all. I have several encounters with very docile and very civilized Bigfoot, I guess you'd call it, since this encounter back in 2014. I don't think these creatures that my friend and I saw are hostile or very violent at all. I think these creatures are very intelligent and very aware of people. I think they're more cautious is the correct word. I think if they truly were violent, they would have acted out against me and my friend. And from what he told me, they had seen him but chose to ignore his presence. Going by the stories, several of which are by the elders, they seem very concerned at me even mentioning these beings. They were concerned that me mentioning the existence of these creatures would somehow anger them and draw them in. Also, if you do decide to post this story, please don't use my name and please mention that I wish to remain anonymous. Story 3. This happened in 1989, Illinois. This was the night shift. I was the swing officer at the time, and any calls we answered came to me, unless a more senior officer was on duty. I received a very strange call. Now, I should say that we had all kinds of calls, but this is one I'll never forget. The guy claimed that there was a green, flying, human-like thing right near his front window, and wanted police assistance. Generally, due to the nature of such a strange request, I was called to the scene. This is a pretty normal residential neighborhood, nothing really out of bounds. I mean, we had calls for all kinds of stuff, but this one was definitely way out there. So, I actually ended up dispatching a car out there, and they came back at a high rate of speed. I did not end up going. One of the officers was shaking, so I asked him what was going on, but he said he saw the thing, and it scared the heck out of him. I could not get any further detail out of him. I asked if they can get the guy in question to come down to the station and make a report, but he would not. For future reference, I had tried for months and months. It got in my head, and I kept thinking about it and how it was not normal. I was probably one of the more logical, down-to-earth officers on the force. Nothing crazy. I eventually went to my captain and told him about the call and how it had been affecting the officers who had arrived on scene and how it was driving me crazy. He basically told me that it was probably just a man who had been drinking too much, and I should not give it so much thought. This, though, was very strange. I eventually, on my off time, went out to the spot myself to investigate, and it was very, very disturbing and unsettling. I took my light, and I could sense that something was very off. I even got a very sickly feeling in my stomach. I went to the house, knocked on the door in question. The guy who answered it, I could tell by his voice, was the man who made the call. I told him who I was and what I had been investigating. He would not give me any details, though, and he kept saying no, I did not see anything. But I'll never forget that look of fear, the terror on his face when he realized not only who I was, but what I was there for and what I was talking about. It's like he saw the mirror image of his own death. I feel for him. Whenever I go out to that spot for other calls, I still feel uneasy, and when I leave, I feel like something will be following me. I don't know if this is paranormal, I don't know if this is ghosts or demons or monsters. I'll let you decide that one. I've still not told too many people about this until now. Thank you for listening and giving me the courage to tell my story. As a police dispatcher, the Sheriff's Department in California from 1977 to 1983, I responded to a radio call of a possible mountain lion in the area of La Crescenta, California, on a foggy night in November. The reports were coming in of a large cat spotted on the hillside above La Crescenta Avenue. We arrived on the scene with a spotlight and our rifles drawn. The cat was spotted on a ridge overlooking the area community near a water storage tank near a storage shed. My partner and I approached the cat from behind, spotlight and rifle pointed at this cat. But as the cat slowly moved away from us, its back to us, I yelled at this thing to move slowly to its left. The cat, or what I thought was a cat, slowly turned its head toward us, revealing its disfigured face, which was not a mountain lion at this point at all. Now, me and my partner here stood frozen with our guns pointed at this thing, because we didn't know what it was. This thing slowly turns toward us on its right side and moved away. We followed it with our guns pointed at this cat. But as it moved away, it was clear that this was no mountain lion, but a humanoid creature that looked at us and communicated very visibly by exposing its jagged teeth. We were not welcome and in trouble. It then changed its posture, making wet popping noises as it stood erect on two legs bipedally, almost like its joints and bones were popping into place. It was at least 7 to 8 feet tall, if not more, and very muscular. I'm still blown away by how much it was able to hide its build and figure from the angle at which it crouched down at. As it continued to move away from us and turned, it still looked at us as we were frozen in fear. It then kind of just walked off into the darkness, leaving my partner and I there, unsure of how to move further. My partner and I had no choice but to walk back to our car, notifying dispatch that we were leaving the area. As we drove away, dispatch informed us that there were more calls who had come in the evening, one particular of 3 juveniles who claimed that they were chased off their bikes by a large cat-like creature from earlier in the day. I do have a memory of the incident that was also very similar to this incident. Not in the sense of dealing with a cat, but dealing with a very unexplainable event. I was alone for this drive, and I was traveling along a lonely 2-lane highway that crosses over a very dry riverbed. The vehicle was a classic black and white. This is a little bit earlier. As I was driving along, I witnessed a sudden white flash that shot across my vehicle and the sky, and there's what appeared to be a huge explosion in the distance, followed by yet another white flash that came from the location of the first explosion. It was clear that I believed that I had witnessed some sort of large explosion. And then I noticed a strange sonic boom that seemed to fry all the electronics in my vehicle, including my radio. The air then filled with a strange chemical odor. My engine and tires seemed to almost overheat. I was able to get out of the car on the side of the road and exit my vehicle. As I looked into the distance to further investigate, I noticed a large cloud of dust rising. And then I heard and saw a pair of choppers flying overhead and flying towards the explosion site. The helicopters were black. I'm unsure to this day if they were military or not. They circled around, and then, just as quickly as they appeared, they seemed to disappear into the dust. And then I began to notice everything around me getting brighter and brighter, until I was completely consumed in a bright white light. And once the light had faded, everything appeared normal. Completely panicked and confused, there was no dust cloud. Nothing seemed out of place. And in fact, the 2-lane highway, which I was just on, which appeared to be virtually empty with no other cars on the road, was now bustling with traffic. I jumped in my vehicle and trying to make sense of what had just happened, turning the car on, and it worked just fine. It gets even weirder. I was now 3 hours behind. This event that took place was right around 2:03 p.m. in the afternoon, and now it was exactly 11:03 a.m. when I got back in the car. Confused, I decided to check everything. Even the position of the sun had changed. It was right around that same time, 11 in the morning. So you tell me, how did I end up going back in time 3 hours, and what did I experience? Was this some sort of nuclear explosion, or did I die? Did I potentially die for a short amount of time, or experience a near-death experience? I'm not sure if any of those things really explains it fully, but I've had a few more similar experiences afterwards. I just didn't tell anybody about it because I knew they would probably lock me up for being crazy. I still can't put my finger on it to this day. Thank you. Signed, Scott. Story 5. I already told you about my old partner, telling you about seeing a gargoyle-type creature in a tree near East 66th and Woodlawn in Chicago, Illinois. I had told you already that we had a lot of strange calls on that street. 2 weeks after my partner told you he had a call in that area, I had a late-night burglar call in that same area. It was just around the corner from the previous call. I was in the process of taking a report, and several people outside were yelling that there was something on the roof. I went to the front door, opening it, and going outside and looking up towards the street. This creature was standing there on the peak of a cone-shaped roof. It was just staring down at me for about a minute or so, and then turning around, jumping off the roof onto the back of a house, walking up the roof as it walked away across the roof, across the rear of the roof, and jumped off into a nearby alleyway. I've been in law enforcement now for well over 14 years. I know what I saw. There's no way it was a human or any animal I'd ever seen. It reminded me of a gargoyle that was easily 6 feet tall, dark-colored, and the wings were about 8 feet long. It had a horned head, and the body was muscular-looking. It walked across the rooftops and disappearing into the darkness of the alley below. I went in, and they took report from the occupants of the house, and did not tell him about what I had seen. I did not end up telling my partner about what I had seen either. Officers are often ridiculed by others if they talk about such things, and I have not talked about this incident with anyone other than my partner, who I eventually did tell, who I also later told you about. I've seen a lot in my day and have disregarded most of it. But I know what I saw in that alley was simply not human or any other animal I've ever seen. Recently, I had the chance to tell my story to a paranormal investigator who works very closely with law enforcement. I will not be sharing their credentials for her safety, but she explained to me that she believes I saw a demon and asked me if I had smelt anything off, like sulfur or rotting meat or even an iron smell like that of blood. She explained to me that demons have been seen all over the world, but when they are seen, people don't normally think of them as demons. She stated that Chicago specifically has a very dark past, one that is rifled with violence, gang activity, along with a lot of demonic activity. It's all very prevalent in the city. She believes that at night specifically, a lot of the gang members and others involved in criminal elements give themselves to these demons. Sometimes, these demons will manifest and become the Gargoyle and go out and cause destruction and mayhem. I don't know if that's what I saw, but I do know it's a scary thought. I had asked her if there was a particular location in Chicago where this activity was prevalent, but she said it was a widespread problem all over the city. She also asked me if I ever saw anything similar to the Gargoyle again. I said that I've seen something along the same lines and that it was pretty evil looking. I've seen dark black figures twice, but don't know what they were. I just know that it's not human and it's very evil, and it hides and lives in the darkness of the city. I don't think demons are always horned creatures either, so just because you see something strange and black doesn't always mean it's a demon. I also believe that there's also other reasons why so many paranormal and ghost investigators come to Chicago. Yes, there is a lot of dark energy here. However, I also don't believe that it's Chicago exclusive. It's all over. I think we're just now beginning to see these things much more than ever before. Story 6. I've been following your YouTube for about a year now, and I've been reading about reptilians for about 3 years now. I have never told anybody about what I saw, so consider yourself privileged that I'm exposing my story to you. I have been a police officer here for well over 23 years now, and I have witnessed some strange things, including ghosts and exorcisms, but that's besides the point. The thing I encountered was very strange. This was in 2006. I was working a late-night shift. I would have to go to the public works garage and pick up snowplows for the plowing trucks. We had a lot of snow that year, and every time I went to pick up the snowplows, I would have to drive down a road that had a tunnel at the end of it. The tunnel was roughly 1,000 feet long. I was driving down this tunnel, and something caught my eye. I looked to the right side of the road, and there was a pair of large yellow eyes looking at me. This was unmistakable. This only took about 2 seconds, and then I was past it. When I passed the area where I saw the eyes, this thing shot off down the tunnel. I turned around and went back around to see if I could see anything. But when I had got back to the area where I had originally seen the eyes, there was nothing there. I got a flashlight, shining it down both sides of the road, but there was nothing there. The eyes had to have been at least 10 to 15 feet from me, right there on the side of the road. I saw something with a long neck as well, and I think it was sitting there on the snowbank. It had also what looked to be like a beak, but I can't be too sure because it happened so fast. I know this sounds crazy and it probably sounds like a wild goose chase. I don't know if you could help me find something or somebody that can answer these questions, but I had to tell somebody about this encounter. I wanted to come back, but it had snowed the night before, and there was no way I was going to see anything evidence-worthy. I am also a very logical person with no illness at all in my family. I would have told you about that, had that been the case. I've seen and heard some things that I will never be able to explain, as I've told you already, and I understand this might sound like I'm coming off the deep end. I know this is the truth, and I'm sure of what I saw. It had to be something not from this world. Story 7. Normally, I don't spend too much of my time writing these kinds of things, but I think you might find it of interest. So, for starters, I work in law enforcement, and have for 8 years now, as of this year, 2022. While I have experienced some very strange things, nothing quite like what I'm about to tell you about. This is so far out in left field, you may not even believe it. This was a regular night in June of 2017. I work in the town of Tuscaloosa, Alabama, right outside the city limits. FYI, there's a lot of alien and paranormal activity around here as well, including a triangular area behind the mall where many strange people and encounters have been reported in the past. Anyway, it was about 10 p.m., and I was finishing up some paperwork when I received a call of a possible break-in at a local jewelry store. The store was only a few minutes away, and I was the closest that responded to the call. I quickly got into my cruiser and headed out. During my response, the call was updated to a full-fledged burglary in progress. As I was driving to the store, I kept getting a really bad feeling. It's hard to explain, but something did not feel right. I had no idea what to expect as I pulled into the parking lot. At this point, I was still about 1 minute away from the store. As soon as I pulled into the lot, a large reptile thing runs out of the store and up the street. It must have been at least 7 feet tall because I could see its body very clearly. I mean, it was large, very dark green, and it ran fast, so much so that it was a blur. I nearly soiled my pants at what I was seeing, the fact that I seen this 8-foot-tall lizard thing bursting out of the glass. Convinced that it was just a person in a costume and I was seeing some sort of furry heist, I quickly got out, aiming my weapon, yelling at this thing to stop, but as I did this, I realized that the movement of this person was far too fluid and fast for it even to be possible of being somebody in a costume. As I was getting out, I heard 2 more bangs as the doors to the store burst open, and another, one of these lizard people, ran out. I watched this thing run towards me, and at this point, frozen with fear now. I could see its large 4-fingered hands and how it ran on its back feet bipedally. It was like I was seeing a half-human, half-dinosaur hybrid, nearly terrified. I could see its teeth also, which were razor sharp. It got up to me, suddenly appearing only several feet away, observing me and sizing me up and down, almost as if I was a snack. I realized it was then looking into me and not just at me. I stepped back, completely unaware of how to handle such a situation, when it said something to me in a language that I did not understand. I was shocked to hear it even speak, and it sounded like that of a demon. I was still unsure of who or what this thing was, as I was thinking what to do. I watched as this thing got down on its hands and knees and ran away on all fours, and as it passed me and ran into the small alley behind the parking lot, and suddenly a third one had come out of the store. This one was different. It appeared to be smaller and much more slender build, like that of a female would have. How was I going to report this? I know it sounds crazy, but I was experiencing it firsthand. Who also appeared lighter in color reached the alleyway, and then they all disappeared. I quickly called it in and remained at the scene. After an hour, that investigator arrived to look over the store and the scene. I quickly left, feeling very strange and confused. They apparently found a strange bioluminescent liquid all over the inside of the store. Nothing was broken into, no jewelry was tampered with, so we have no idea what the correlation and connection is between these beings that I saw and why they were in the store at the time. I have no idea what the test came back as, by the way. As I left, though, my vision became like I was looking through a fish lens. I had a week or 2 afterwards of derangement and all sorts of strange symptoms. Severe illness, actually. When I had medical tests done on me, the doctors informed me that I had at some point come into contact with toxic levels of radiation and questioned where I had been that I would lead to such symptoms. How is this even possible? I have not seen them since, but I fear that I will encounter these things again. I know it sounds crazy, but this is 100% true. I have never told anybody about this, and only a few investigators know about the incident. I just want to know what they are and why they are here. Story 8. I had a sighting in 2007 of a reptilian being in an alleyway in Chicago. This thing was several feet tall with scales and red eyes, and it was kind of scrounging around with its back half in a garbage can or dumpster at about 2:30 in the morning. I'm an officer, and I can't tell you the level of trauma this encounter caused me. I was literally traumatized. However, I also want to say that I believe that this reptilian I saw can somehow be a positive thing, because you see, it's caused me to look at people differently now, in situations with a much more open-minded, expanded view. This reptilian I believe saw me too, and could have potentially been trying to communicate with me telepathically, but I'm not so sure. I'm still very intrigued by the whole thing, and maybe I should be more scared than I actually am. I've never bothered to report this, even though I've had countless other police reports. I've never reported it because I thought people would think I was crazy, or that the police would be after me, because I've never signed off to any of my medical files, psych history, or Chicago crime incident reports. But I wanted to share this with you and your show, with people who won't wonder if I'm crazy or not, or if police are going to try and shut me up and try to make this anonymous. Story 9. In 2008, I had just graduated the academy and started my career as a police officer when I had my first sighting. You know, sometimes people would joke around and tell stories of skinwalkers. I was very familiar with the lore. Little did I know that that is what all became reality. Because in 2008, when I was just getting started on the job, things were quiet. They were just the usual speeders, pickpocketing, butting heads with drunks, etc. There was an officer whom I won't name that had lived outside the city, and he would routinely come into work in the morning. We greeted each other often and became more than acquaintances, actually friends. So this particular morning, just like any other, pretty early, about 4 a.m., said that he was going to be about 3 minutes out, and he was going to stop and get something to eat. Well, 3 minutes go by, that turns to 10, turns to 20, turns to a half hour. There's no communication. So I'm thinking maybe something happened. So I try to contact him, and nothing happens. I decide to swing by his home to see what the holdup was. When I get up to his house, I'm not seeing his police unit. So now I'm getting worried. I walk up to his door and knock, and I hear my friend start to cry out for help. I run around to the back of his house, and I see a strange being running across the neighbor's yard, covered in animal skins and running around on all fours. I point my weapon at it, and stopped on the neighbor's fence line. It stands up on its hind legs, and what I thought was a large coyote was actually a man, at least 7 feet tall, so a very tall man. And I'm thinking, why is this person so huge, and why are they wearing all these different animal skins? I took aim, but I was scared because everything in my gut was screaming that it was wrong. It then runs through the fence. I put out a call to dispatch. I do my best to keep an eye on where it had went, and it stopped and was hiding behind an abandoned car. It peeks out from behind the car and runs off further. After it ran off, I went to investigate my friend's house, which the back door was entirely shattered, like something big had burst through his door on the outside. We went inside, decided to investigate, and found my friend, or officer, dead in his bathtub. His arms torn off completely and his chest ripped open with large bite marks that were canine. He had cuts and bruises all over his body. He was naked, and the water still running. In the room, there was also blood everywhere. I called in the crime scene to the station. They sent out the crime scene guys and collected all the evidence, including my friend. It really took me a while to get over that night. And I understand if this still comes off as some sort of stupid, poorly written creepypasta, but it's an experience that I have to live with, and I'm haunted by that memory. I've only told this to a few people, and I've seen that thing from time to time. It's been almost 10 years now, and I still see it. I have not faced it again, but I know it's been there. It had to have been a skinwalker. When it ran out from behind that house and over the fence, it was like a large coyote or something. I'm still terrified to this day. This also happened in New Mexico. I hope you guys enjoy this video and this new style of format that I'm doing. If you're new to the channel, be sure to go ahead and click the button below and subscribe if you have not already, and also leave a comment below and like this video, and let me know what other kinds of content you guys would like to see. As always, I will see you guys in the next video.